So you're just leaving? Brad called after me. Yes, 'cause I finally see that you'd rather side with your petty girlfriend than stand up for me. Enjoy your toxic relationship. I'm out. It started as just another day at school, but something felt different. The air was heavier, my thoughts were clouded, and the usual energy that carried me through my classes was nowhere to be found. My grandpa had been in the hospital for the past few days, and while I tried to push it to the back of my mind, the worry gnawed at me. At lunch, I sat with my usual group, Brad, Diane, and a few others. Normally, I was the one keeping the conversation going, cracking jokes, and making sure no one ever felt left out. But today, I just didn't have it in me. I picked at my food, half listening to the chatter around me, feeling like I was watching my own life from the outside. Diane must have noticed because she nudged me lightly. Hey, wanna come with me to throw something away? This was our unspoken code. It wasn't really about the trash, it was about getting a minute alone to talk. Sometimes it was to gossip, sometimes it was to vent, and sometimes it was just to take a break from the chaos of the group. I nodded, grateful for the chance to step away. Maybe, just maybe, she would understand. As we walked away from the table, I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Sorry if I seem off today, I started, my voice quieter than usual. My grandpa's in the hospital, and oh my God, Diane cut me off, her tone completely detached from mine. Do you like my shirt? I blinked, caught off guard. She was wearing one of those trendy black shirts with a bleach-dyed heart in the center. Normally, I might have complimented her outfit without a second thought, but right now, I was struggling to hold myself together, and she wanted to talk about fashion. Yeah, I guess, I said, still confused. Can I get back to talking about my grandpa who's in the hospital now? Diane let out a dramatic sigh, rolling her eyes. I guess, that was it. No sympathy, no curiosity, no attempt to understand what I was going through, just indifference. I swallowed down the lump in my throat as we made our way back to the table. I could feel the weight of my emotions pressing against my chest, but I wasn't going to let them spill over here, in the middle of the cafeteria. Not now, not in front of everyone. We sat down, but the tension between us was obvious. Brad, always the peacemaker, immediately picked up on it. What's going on? He asked, looking between the two of us. Before I could say anything, Diane pushed back her chair and stormed off. Just like that, I stared after her, completely bewildered. What just happened? Why was she upset? I was the one who had been ignored. Brad turned back to me, his expression a mix of confusion and concern. What did you do? I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. I didn't do anything, I said, my voice strained. I was trying to tell her about my grandpa being in the hospital, and she interrupted me to talk about her shirt. I got upset, and now she's acting like I did something wrong. Brad frowned. Why can't you just say you're sorry? I felt something inside me crack. For as long as I could remember, I had been the one to apologize. It didn't matter if I was in the wrong or not. If Diane was upset, I apologized. If she felt slighted, I apologized. It had become second nature, a reflex I couldn't seem to shake. But after months of therapy, months of unlearning the habit of taking responsibility for things that weren't my fault, I had finally started to set boundaries. And now, in one sentence, Brad had made me feel like none of that progress mattered. I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes, my throat tightening. My emotions were a tangled mess of frustration, hurt, and exhaustion. I knew if I tried to explain myself, it would only lead to another round of invalidation, another instance of being told that keeping the peace was more important than standing up for myself. So I did the only thing I could think of. I walked away. I didn't run. I didn't slam my tray down, or make a scene. I just stood up, turned around, and left. As I walked away, I heard Brad say, "What did I do?" to one of our friends. The words only fueled my anger. What did you do? You made me feel like my emotions weren't valid. You made me feel like my progress didn't matter. You made me feel like, once again, I had to be the one to fix something that wasn't my fault. I kept walking, not stopping until I reached the bathroom. I pushed open the door, and leaned against the sink, gripping the edge so tightly my knuckles turned white. I took deep breaths, willing myself not to cry. I hated crying. It always made me feel weak, especially when I knew the people who had hurt me weren't even aware of the damage they had done. After a minute, I turned on the faucet, and splashed some cold water on my face. Looking at my reflection, I tried to convince myself that I had done the right thing, that walking away wasn't a sign of weakness, but of strength. But if that was true, why did I feel so defeated? I walked away quickly, my footsteps echoing through the school hallway, my hands clenched into fists at my sides, not out of anger, but out of frustration. It wasn't supposed to go like this. I had been trying so hard to work on myself, to set boundaries, to not be the person who just apologized for the sake of keeping the peace. But here I was again, feeling like the villain for doing exactly what I had been told in therapy was healthy. As I turned a corner, I found myself in the quieter part of the school near the library. My heart was still racing from the interaction. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stop walking and lean against the wall. My eyes burned, but I refused to cry. Not here, not over this. I pulled out my phone, my fingers shaking slightly, and stared at the screen. I had a few notifications, but I ignored them. I wanted to text someone, to vent, to ask if I was in the wrong, to hear that I wasn't crazy for being upset, but I didn't even know who to turn to. Before I could overthink it, I opened my messages and typed out a text to my older sister, Lily. "Hey, can I call you? I need to talk." A few seconds later, 3 dots appeared. "Of course. You okay?" I hesitated. Was I okay? Not really, but I also didn't want to dump everything on her. Before I could decide what to say, my phone buzzed. She was calling me. I stepped into an empty classroom, closed the door behind me, and answered. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hey, what's wrong?" Her voice was gentle, but firm, like she could already tell I was holding back. I took a shaky breath. "It's just Brad and Diane again. Or maybe just Diane, I don't know." She sighed. "What happened this time?" So I told her everything. From how Diane interrupted me when I was talking about Grandpa, to how she stormed off, to Brad immediately jumping to her defense and acting like I was the problem. When I was done, there was a pause. "Okay," Lily finally said. "First of all, you're not crazy. That was really messed up of her. She dismissed you when you were trying to talk about something important, and then she made it into her problem when you called her out on it. And Brad? Come on, he should know you better than that." I felt a lump in my throat. That's what hurts the most. Brad and I have been friends for years. He knows me. He knows I don't just get upset over nothing. But he acted like I was being dramatic for no reason. "Yeah, because he's used to you just apologizing to keep the peace," Lily said bluntly. "That's what people like Diane count on. They push you until you snap, and when you finally stand up for yourself, you look like the bad guy. And then people like Brad just go along with it, because it's easier." I swallowed hard. "So what do I do?" There was another pause, then Lily sighed. "I think you need to decide what you're willing to put up with. Do you really want to keep a friendship where you always have to be the one backing down, where your feelings don't matter as much as theirs?" I closed my eyes, resting my forehead against the cool surface of the desk in front of me. I hated that she was right. I had spent so much time trying to convince myself that I could just fix things if I kept being patient, that if I worked on myself, I could make my friendships better. But some things weren't mine to fix. "I don't know," I admitted. "I don't want to lose Brad, but I don't think I can keep doing this either." "Then maybe it's time to take a step back," Lily said gently. "See if Brad even notices how one-sided this friendship has been. If he does, he'll reach out. If he doesn't," she sighed, "then maybe you have your answer." I didn't respond right away. I didn't want to admit that she might be right. "You don't have to decide right now," Lily added. "Just take a break. Give yourself some space. You've been through a lot lately. Don't make yourself responsible for fixing things that other people broke." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Lily. Anytime," she said warmly. "I mean it." I ended the call and sat there for a while, staring at the wall. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was time to stop chasing friendships that only hurt me. But deep down, I wasn't sure if I was ready to let go. I stayed in the empty classroom for a while, letting Lily's words sink in. The logical part of me knew she was right. If a friendship required me to constantly apologize and sacrifice my own feelings, was it really a friendship at all? But the emotional part of me, the part that still clung to the memories of late-night conversations with Brad, inside jokes, and the feeling that he was someone I could always count on, wasn't ready to let go so easily. My phone buzzed. I flinched, half expecting it to be a message from Brad. But when I looked, it wasn't him. It was from one of our other friends, Jake. "Hey, everything okay?" That was kinda intense. I hesitated before responding. "Honestly, not really." A few seconds later, 3 dots appeared. "Wanna talk? I'm in the music room. No pressure." I stared at the message. Jake wasn't someone I was as close to as Brad or Diane, but he had always been a steady presence in our group. He was the kind of guy who didn't say much, but when he did, It actually meant something. I exhaled slowly, then stood up. Maybe talking to someone outside of the situation would help. I made my way to the music room, my footsteps feeling heavier than they should. When I pushed open the door, Jake was sitting on top of one of the desks, idly tapping a pencil against his knee. He glanced up when he saw me. "Hey," he said, his voice casual but kind. "Hey," I murmured, stepping inside and shutting the door behind me. He studied me for a second, then gestured to the seat next to him. "So what's up?" I let out a bitter laugh. "You mean besides the fact that my supposed best friend just made me feel like I was the bad guy for being upset?" Jake nodded. "Yeah, besides that." I sighed, and ran a hand through my hair. "I don't know, I feel like I'm always the one who has to be the bigger person. I'm always the one apologizing, smoothing things over, making sure no one's upset. And I was okay with that for a while, because I thought that's just how friendships worked. But now I'm realizing that maybe that's not normal, or at least, not fair." Jake nodded again, his expression thoughtful. "It's not fair," he said simply. "And honestly, it's not real friendship if you're the only one making the effort." I swallowed hard. "That's what Lily said too." "Smart girl," Jake said, with a small smirk. Then his expression turned more serious. "Look, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but I've been watching this for a while. The way Diane treats you, it's not okay, and the way Brad just goes along with it, that's not okay either." I blinked at him. "You noticed?" "Of course I noticed," he said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "You're not as hard to read as you think. You laugh things off, but I can tell when something bothers you, and I can definitely tell when Diane is being..." He hesitated. "Let's just say, Diane. Despite everything." I snorted. "Yeah, that's a good way to put it." Jake leaned back on his hands. "So what now?" I let out a long breath. "I don't know. Part of me wants to text Brad, and just, I don't know, explain. Try to make him see where I'm coming from." Jake tilted his head. "And the other part?" I hesitated. "The other part is tired. Tired of feeling like I have to justify my feelings all the time. Tired of feeling like I have to prove that I deserve to be upset." Jake nodded, as if that was the answer he expected. "Then maybe it's time to stop chasing people who don't care enough to meet you halfway." His words hit me harder than I thought they would. Was I chasing something that wasn't there anymore? I looked down at my hands, my mind spinning. "I just don't know how to walk away," I admitted. "I don't want to lose Brad." "Then don't walk away," Jake said, "but stop running after him too. If he cares, he'll come to you. If he doesn't," he shrugged. "Maybe he was never really your best friend to begin with." The thought made my chest ache. I wanted to believe that Brad cared, that he wasn't just blindly siding with Diane, because it was easier, that our years of friendship actually meant something. But if he really did care, wouldn't he have at least tried to understand where I was coming from? I exhaled and looked up at Jake. "Thanks," I said quietly, "for listening." Jake gave me a small smile. "Anytime." I left the music room feeling slightly lighter but also more uncertain than ever. I had always assumed that friendships were supposed to last forever, but maybe some of them were only meant to last until you realized you deserved better. The rest of the day felt like a blur. I went to my classes, but I barely paid attention. My mind kept replaying the conversation with Jake, the way he had seen everything I thought I had hidden so well, the way he had made it sound so simple that I deserved better, that I shouldn't have to chase people who didn't care enough to meet me halfway. But it wasn't simple, because no matter how much I tried to tell myself that I was done, that I wouldn't keep putting myself in situations where I had to beg to be heard, a part of me still wanted to believe that this was just a misunderstanding, that if I could just explain things to Brad, he would see my side, that maybe, just maybe, I wouldn't have to lose my best friend. By the time lunch rolled around, I was exhausted. I hadn't planned on sitting with them. I told myself I wouldn't. But somehow my feet still carried me toward our usual table. When I got there, Brad and Diane were already sitting together, whispering. Diane looked up first. Her eyes narrowed slightly before she turned her attention back to Brad, murmuring something under her breath. Brad glanced at me, and for a split second something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe, or hesitation. But then just as quickly, it was gone. I stood there for a moment, waiting, hoping. He didn't say anything, neither did Diane. And just like that, I had my answer. I swallowed hard and turned around, walking in the opposite direction. Jake, who had been watching from a distance, caught up to me. So, that was a choice, he muttered. I let out a shaky breath. Yeah, it was. We ended up sitting outside on the steps near the back of the school. It was quieter there, away from the noise of the cafeteria, away from the weight of old friendships that suddenly felt like ghosts. You okay? Jake asked after a few minutes of silence. I shrugged. I don't know. You did the right thing, he said. Even if it doesn't feel like it right now. I closed my eyes, letting the afternoon breeze cool my burning face. Then why does it hurt so much? Jake didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than usual. Because losing people always hurts, even when you know you deserve better. I sighed, leaning my head back against the railing. I just don't get it. I thought Brad cared about me. I thought he knew me. But the second Diane got upset, it was like I didn't even matter. Jake nodded. Because he's afraid of upsetting her more than he's afraid of losing you. The words cut deep, but I knew they were true. That's not how friendship is supposed to work, I muttered. No, Jake agreed. It's not. We sat there for a long time, neither of us saying much. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself feel the weight of it all. The disappointment, the anger, the sadness. Maybe I was finally done pretending that it didn't hurt. Maybe I was finally ready to let go. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind refusing to settle. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Brad's face, his silence, his hesitation, and then nothing. No effort to reach out, no attempt to understand. I kept replaying the moment I had turned away from our lunch table. I had wanted him to stop me. I had wanted him to say something, anything, to prove that he still cared, but he hadn't. And deep down, I knew what that meant. It was over. Not in a dramatic screaming, door-slamming way. Not in some explosive, unforgettable argument. No, it had ended in the quietest way possible. Indifference. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing myself not to cry. It wasn't worth it. If he could let me walk away that easily, then maybe we had never been as close as I thought. Maybe I had been holding on to an idea of our friendship, instead of the reality of it. My phone buzzed on my nightstand, snapping me out of my thoughts. I grabbed it, half hoping it was Brad. But when I checked the screen, it wasn't him. It was Jake, just checking in. You good? I hesitated for a second before responding. I think so, it just sucks. Yeah, I figured. But you handled it the way you needed to. Proud of you. I stared at the message for a long time, warmth spreading through my chest. It was such a simple thing to say, but it meant more than I could put into words. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't the one chasing someone else's approval. I wasn't the one apologizing just to make someone else comfortable. I wasn't the one sacrificing my own feelings, just to keep a friendship that didn't value me. And yeah, it sucked. It hurt. But it also felt lighter, like I had finally stopped carrying something that had been weighing me down for too long. I took a deep breath and typed one last message before putting my phone down. Thanks, Jake. Really. Maybe losing Brad wasn't the end of the world. Maybe it was just the start of something better.